Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado, and I am with Kyle Reyes. We're talking about the masculinity crisis. Kyle, do you think there's a crisis?
I don't think there's a crisis in masculinity, Rachel. I think there's a crisis in lack of masculinity and the radical concept that being a man is suddenly a problem. And yet you never see anyone in the middle of a national emergency or train wreck or car accident or floods or natural disasters looking for one of these soy boys who, can't lift a more than a 40-ounce beer from a craft brewery coming out there to save innocent women and children. That is the crisis that America is facing right now. A lack of willingness to honor God, protect women and children, and step up and do the right thing. That is the crisis. I do not believe masculinity is the crisis.
Mm. And Kyle, what's a soy boy? What's that?
A soy boy, you guys know what a soy boy is just based on the look of them. They
Oh,
they are someone who is more concerned with underwater basket weaving and watching Rachel Ray than stepping up and doing the right thing and providing for their families. They are physically they you ever hear the expression like a skinny fat man? And by the way, I can say this because I was a super fat dude for a really long time. Like my senior year in high school, I was 328 pounds. But then I also recognized that it's very important to take care of one's body and to be a provider and to step up and do the right thing. But these are the guys who are going around who are very, very proudly bragging about dad bods and are more interested in self-care and self-help than providing for loved ones and providing for families.
I'm laughing, Kyle, because I'm a therapist and I own my life coach. So of course I'm into self-care.
Well,
But
there's a
I
difference.
understand
Hang
what you're
on.
saying.
There's a really big difference between self-care, like going to the gym and taking time for mental health. Like we do have a mental health crisis in America, right? Like there's a very big difference between self-care and saying, well, I'm not going to work because I'm triggered by the fact that Trump held a press conference, and so instead I need to go play a violin and drink soy lattes. Like there's a really big difference between self-care and not stepping up and being a man.
Mm. And Kyle, you have a new project and you are showcasing masculinity. What is that?
Yeah, so we're actually recording it. It originally was called The Real Man Show. We did 2 seasons of it, and now we've rebranded it as Real Man TV. It's going to be
Hmm.
featured on Pursuit Channel. Our first 2 episodes drop in May. So the whole idea, Rachel, behind this show, it was actually kind of an accident. We ran the marketing for my marketing agency ran the marketing for an automotive group, a Ford dealership. And the one of the owners and I were sitting around drinking whiskey one night. This was about 7 or 8 years ago. And we probably had a few too many cocktails. And he said, I'm so sick of this toxicity of manliness BS. And I said, well, let's do something about it. He's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, let's do a show. He was like, what are we going to call it? I was like, The Real Man Show. He was like Jimmy Kimmel? I was like, no, that was the man show. We're real men. Like, we're going to go do man things and get to write it off on our taxes because it's all for work, and because we're going to use it to grow our businesses. And then our wives are going to give us passes to go do man stuff because it's for work. And he was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And then, the next day we were sober and not drinking whiskey. And a couple of days after that, he was like, hey, weren't we talking about doing a show? I was like, yeah, we were. He was like, you want to do it? I was like, cool. So we called up our boy John Cavana. Cavana he's now a selectman I'm sorry, he's on the town council. He's big time conservative. He's in his 30s, but he's basically like a 90-year-old redneck soul. He wears flannel, he wears holsters on each hip. He's got a big curly mustache. He always has a pipe in his mouth. Police officer, runs a SWAT team, runs the armory, super good dude, entrepreneur. And we're like, yo, Cavano, we're thinking about doing this show. He was like, all right, well, come on down to the farm and let's shoot some guns. So we went down and he taught us how to shoot a 50 cal, and we did some, blowing some stuff up. And then we drove a train that he built on the property and did some cool stuff. So the first episode went up and we got 325,000 views in 24 hours. And we went, oh, we're on to something here. And so to us, being a real man, it's not about women in bikinis on trampolines while you sit around drinking beer. It's about honor and integrity and dignity and respect. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about authenticity and vulnerability. It's about honoring those who serve. It's about embracing the art of manliness while simultaneously showing America that the priorities in this world are serving God, are providing for your families, are taking care of the innocent, building businesses. And so we've done everything from underwater escape training to wild boar hunts and choppers in Texas in the middle of the night. We learned how to fly helicopters. We did lumberjacking. We did man cake baking. We featured all sorts of cool businesses. Like we've done some really wild stuff. So it got picked up for season 3. We had actually now a congressman was our sort of our fill-in co-host for a while. He did probably 6 or 7 episodes. Congressman Eli Crane out of Arizona. He's my best buddy. He's a former SEAL sniper. He did a whole bunch of deployments. He then started a company that was on Shark Tank called Bottle Breacher, turned 50 cal bullets into bottle openers. If you look somewhere here on the whiskey wall behind us, I've got
Ooh,
I don't know, this I'm all backwards here. Some are up there, and then we've got some over here on the wall. So super cool company. And so Eli did a whole bunch of shows with us. And so season 3 is more insane than ever. Like we're planning a trip to Nicaragua for volcano sledding, and we just did zip lining across canyons on the most high-speed zip line in the world. And I can't even talk about some of the other stuff that we're planning because we have NDAs in place, but it is going to be super, super cool.
yes. And Kyle, are the men responding and the women are interested? This genuine thirst for just what it is to be a man. They love it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously dudes love it. Well, like real dudes, they love it because we're dudes, right? But so we got nominated. This was, I believe, 2019 for an award for the most innovative idea in automotive marketing for this show. And so they flew us out to Vegas and we had to present in front of it was something like 1,800 dealer principals, so owners of car dealerships. And so we watched all of the previous contestants to see who presented, how they presented, how they prepared for it. So you would have 5 minutes for Q&A, and then,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, 5 minutes for your
Yes.
presentation, 5 minutes for Q&A. So we get down there for the sound check, and we walk in and they said, "All right, which one of you is presenting?" And we were like, it was like a scene at a Step Brothers. We were like, "Oh, we're here to present together." And they were like, "No, it's just one person." We were like, "Well, you guys flew us both out here, and you knew that we did this together. We're co-hosts on this show." They were like, "Well, you're probably gonna have to share a microphone." We were like, "That's fine." So they said, "All right, how do you want us to introduce you?" So I handed them a flash drive. It's a little thumb drive. I said, "Just play this video." They're like, "Play the video." I'm like, "Yeah, just do it." They were like, "You only have 5 minutes. How long is this video?" I said, "It's 2 minutes." They said, "Then you're only going to have 3 minutes to present." I said, "Please, man, we only need 3 minutes to win this thing." So we're watching the videos of all the previous contestants and they all get up there in their 3-piece suits and their PowerPoint presentations. Rachel, look at me. Do I look like I'm going to wear a freaking 3-piece suit on stage? That's just not how we roll. So sure enough, everyone gets up there and they're all wearing their 3-piece suits, doing their PowerPoint presentation. So it comes time for us. And they saved us for last because, you save the best for last. Either that or they thought like these guys are so whacked out of their minds that they're just going to scare people off. So they said, all right, well, for our final competitor, we're supposed to just, instead of introducing them, play this video. So we put together this sizzle reel set to Kid Rock's Greatest Show on Earth. And it's just all high speed explosions and us shooting stuff and like just mayhem, right? Highly offensive video to anyone who was there who might have been liberal. And so it ends with, "Welcome to the greatest effing show on earth." Boom, big explosion. And Mike and I walk out onto stage and we're not wearing 3-piece suits.
Mhm.
We're wearing jeans, combat boots, real man show t-shirts, and we're smoking stogies and drinking whiskey on stage, like all the no-nos, all the bad things. And the audience is silent. And I went, uh-oh, we might have called this one wrong. And the dude who had presented right before us, he was a stereotypical millennial. I mean, like as stereotypical as you could get, and he played a ukulele. Like that was his jam. So everyone's staring at us. And I look at Mike, Mike looks at me, and I was like, well, we don't play music. And the audience is silent, and I point to him and I go, but Mike's a freaking US Marine. And we go from silence to all of a sudden everyone's chanting, USA, USA. And
Wow.
like we're in the game. So we present, and then there's a panel of judges, and one of the judges is this like bombshell 37-year-old woman who her family owns like 40 dealerships or whatever. And she was like, all right, gentlemen, well done. Great presentation. I have just one question for you. We're like, what's up? She goes, what would you say if I said you have completely disenfranchised half of your potential demographic? I said, how do you figure? She goes, gentlemen, the real man show. Like, what about women? I said, well, I appreciate that question. And I would also encourage you to take a look at the data. 58% of our audience is women. And I believe it's not just because we're extremely good looking and charismatic, but it also has something to do with the fact that to us, being a real man is about protecting women and providing for them and honoring them and treating them with honor and integrity and decency and respect. And when you look at what's happening in society these days, there's a complete absence of that. That is now considered toxic to
Mm,
provide for a woman or to take care of them or to care about them and cherish them and be authentic and vulnerable with them. And so if being, if having the name of the show as the real man show is what triggers people when the reality of it is that the overwhelming portion of our audience is women, I would say that anyone who has a problem with that show is the problem. It's not us.
mm,
Well, we won, and that's sort of the long and short of it. But it's Rachel, we're in this weird place in society where I held a door open for a woman recently,
mm,
and she walked through like just what you do, like that's how we were raised, right? And we walked through. She walked through and didn't say anything, and I was like, I was having a day. I was like, "You're welcome." And most people who just think it in their head, I don't have a filter. There's
yes.
not. And she turned around and she was like, "Well, maybe if you weren't such a chauvinist, sexist pig." I was like, "Excuse me?" She goes, "Holding the door for a woman." I was like, "My bad.
Wow.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect you by opening a door for you." I mean, it should have been a giveaway when she had like her short purple hair. Like, come on. People are just out of control, Rachel, out of control. It will never change who we are as men. You could have a million pink-haired pixies yelling at us, and it's just not going to change the fact that we know that we are on the right side of history.
Mm. And the numbers speak for themselves, Kyle. 58% of your audience is women. And I always say that women like masculine men. Don't pay attention to what they say. Watch what they do when they're around the alpha masculine men.
Well, and I also believe that true alphas are men who don't have to announce to the world that they're alphas, right? Like we
Yes,
we will stand there and give you the look that says if you mess with the people around me, we're gonna have a problem. But you don't have to go around screaming, "Oh, I'm an alpha dog. I'm that
yes,
guy. I'm a big man." Like just own your stuff, right? Just be respectful, be that quiet peacekeeper. And you're right. The numbers do speak for themselves that we have millions of views on the shows. We are just flooded with people who want to be on the show or who want to have us come
yes,
out. As we go into season 3 here, one of the things that we're going to be rolling out, one of my co-hosts,
yes.
Big Black Army Ranger, my boy Josh, one of my best friends in the world. And so we talk a lot about, I have always on the show a co-host who's either law enforcement or military. He's a
Mm,
ranger. And then we also, what we're going to be doing is as we travel to new locations, we're going to do an after party after the filming, and we're going to
yes.
partner with a big local nonprofit in either the
Mm,
law enforcement or the veteran community. And we will do a big fundraiser, like a meet and greet with the cast and crew. And the
yes.
nonprofit that we partner with, they'll keep all of the proceeds from the event. We don't want to see a penny from it because it's about, again, it's about serving those who serve. It's about glorifying God and these opportunities that we have, but we will never apologize for being men.
Yes. And for the young guys and all the men, what's your advice for them?
So society is going to try and tell you that there's no biological difference between men and women.
Hmm.
Society is stupid. People are
Hmm.
stupid. Um, so I would tell you to man up, and
Mm.
if you want to be taken seriously, you need to grow a pair if you're a
Hmm.
dude. There is a biological difference between men and women, and if you don't believe that, I would encourage you, if you are a man, to watch some of these competitive powerlifting championships where you have a woman who identifies as a man or vice versa. Like there is a biological difference between men and women, and we can pretend all day long. But listen, Rachel, and we might as well get into the kid stuff here, right? The
Yes.
the whole idea that you have parents who are telling their kids, well, you could choose what you want to be, that is child abuse. That
Mm.
is failed parenting, and those parents should not be allowed to have children. I'll call it what it is, and I'll take all the grief in the world for that. Guess what? If little Johnny were to say, "Hey, Dad, I identify as Superman," are you as the dad going to say, "Well, Johnny, go up onto the third floor and jump and see if you can fly"? Of course not. That's ludicrous. So, but it's somehow socially acceptable to be like, you know what, Johnny, you're right. We should cut off your wee wee. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. That's not child abuse at all. We call that genital mutilation when other countries do it.
Yeah.
And here it's socially acceptable to be encouraging that. We are at such a tip, and we aren't even at a tipping point in society. We are broken. In it was what 50, 60 years ago, we kicked God out of schools. And then we
Hmm.
said, well, where was your God in that school when that shooting happened? Or we've taken the anti-bullying programs to such an extreme. Like I used to get the crap kicked out of me. I'm not saying it was good at all,
Yes.
but I was taught about bullying and that in the real world, it happens. You can't just wish it away. You can't pretend
Mm.
that it doesn't happen. And so instead of giving kids coping mechanisms or teaching them how to handle these situations so that when they're in the real world outside of school and there's no one to protect them, they know how to handle it. They don't
Mm.
go crying for a safe space. Like instead of doing that, we're teaching them that it doesn't exist, that bullying doesn't exist. And what's happening is we're seeing a rise in school shootings because it gets to a point where like these schools are doing such a crappy job of handling bullying by pretending it doesn't exist, and then in a lot of cases actually protecting the bullies, that kids hit a breaking point. I'm not saying it's right, but when a kid feels like I asked for help and I asked for help and I asked for help and nobody helped me and nobody helped me and nobody helped me, they go to an extreme place. And that isn't just a problem with the kid. That is a failure of the parents. That is a failure of the school system. That is a failure of society to protect these kids, to train them in coping mechanisms and understanding that yes, bullying exists, but then actually doing something about the bullying problem. Not
Mm.
just pretending like, oh, if you just hide your face or go cry in a safe space, it's going to go away. It doesn't. In the real world does not care about your feelings.
Mm. Yes. And at the core of masculinity is that you protect women and children, and you are talking about the children. Very important. And in your work, was there a mentor or a real man that told you something interesting, that helped you in a way?
Yeah, I mean, listen, my upbringing, like I said, I used to get beat up all the time. Rachel, a few years ago, I was out at a private event in Vegas with Sig Sauer, this really cool media day. And I knew a lot of the dudes who were out there. We were shooting guns with like Chad Prather and the author of the Jack Reacher series, like before anyone knew who he was, and my boy Eli. And there's this one dude who we hit it off big time right away. And he looked
Mm.
familiar. I just couldn't place him. Um, there were so many people around, and we were shooting guns together for 8 hours, right? Like, all day, having a freaking blast. Big dude. So we swap info at the end and he gives me his number. And then I go to leave, and my director of operations who was out there, she comes up to me. She's like, yo, you guys want a picture together, right? And he was like, yeah, of course. And I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, like, I'm not starstruck by
Yes.
anybody. I mean, I get to hang out with super cool dudes, celebrities, non-celebrities all the time.
Yes.
It's never, I worked in TV for 10 years. I don't care. I just care about whether
Yes.
you're a cool dude or not. So I'm like, yeah. She was like, you do want a picture, right? And I'm like, okay. So we all take a picture and I gotta walk away and she's like, "You freaking idiot. You don't know who that was, do you?" I'm like, he looked familiar. I couldn't place him. She was like, "That was the Undertaker." And I was like, "Oh my God." So I go back up to him. I was like, "Bro." He was like, "What's up?" I'm like, "It just hit me." And he's like, "Oh man, don't be like that." I'm like, "No, listen, normally I'm not like that, but I got a straight up fanboy right now." So he starts laughing. I'm like, "Here's the thing, man. I can't believe I didn't even put two and two together because you saved my life when I was a kid." He was like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Bro, I used to get the crap beat out of me and I would go
Mm.
home super depressed and then I would watch you wrestle.
Wow.
And I'd be like, one day I'm going to put them in the grave." And he
Mm.
was like, "All right, man, like that's super cool." And so guys like that, these old school wrestlers, the old school badasses, taught me that it's okay to stand up and defend yourself and protect yourself. You're not going to win every match, but as long as you can stand there and hold your head up high at the end of the day, you're a
Mm.
winner. But this whole like,
Wow.
oh, there are no winners and losers in sports. It's all about having a good time. Like anyone who tells a kid that there's no such thing as a loser, like that parent is a loser. I'm sorry. In life, there are winners and there are losers, and you need to learn how to deal with it and cope with it and come out better for it. But this whole participation trophy BS, this whole like when Trump was inaugurated, they cancel college campuses, classes all across the country to mourn the death of America. Like, give me a freaking break. After September 11th, the next day, we all went back to class.
Mhm.
You know why? Because we had difficult conversations, because those conversations had to happen. And so the idea that we need to shelter people from reality, especially these overeducated,
Yes.
overpaid,
Yes.
glorified, basically overage toddlers who are in our
Mm.
college campuses right now are going to get a heavy dose of reality
Mm.
when the world wakes up and realizes that this whole
Yes.
DEI BS is collapsing around them. The idea that we are going to promote you above someone who is more educated or smarter or more
Mhm.
equipped to do a job than you based on what you look like or based on your background, that those days are coming to an end.
Mm. Yes. And Kyle, last words from you on masculinity and winning as a man.
So I like to think of myself. I wish that I could think of myself as the Archangel Michael, right? Like I want to go into battle every single day, and I want to help bring people to Jesus and to God, and to help them understand that like we're supposed to put on the armor of God every day, like
Mhm.
the full armor, and be ready to go into battle for righteousness and
Yes.
truth. But I think in reality, I'm more like Peter in the Bible, who is like constantly a screw up, right? Like
Oh,
dude was
yes, yes.
making mistakes every single day, and he had like such a good heart, and he wanted to
Mm.
always step out of the boat in faith, but he was afraid to. And I think that that's a lot of dudes, right? Like we want to be
Mm.
like the archangel, we want to go into battle. But we're afraid to, and we are constant screw ups. We're all going to screw up, and that's okay. If you can
Yes.
hold your head high, recognize and acknowledge and be authentic about the fact that you're not perfect, I think that that is a crucial component of self-awareness and self-actualization and becoming the man that the men who are watching this are destined to be. And I would ask the wives and the women who are watching this to be patient with us
Mm.
because we are screw ups, because we will fail you, we will make mistakes, we will screw up. But encourage your men to continue that life of service, encourage them to get you and your church or your whole family into a good church. Um, eh, the big mistake. So we pulled our kids out of public school on Fox and Friends because of the woke liberal BS that was going on in the classrooms. And it was in that moment that I realized that for the last like 8 years, I've actually failed my wife and I failed my family because I, as a dad, and I'm sure many other people who are watching this right now can relate to this, we sat on the sidelines
Mm.
and we let our wives and moms fight that fight. And there is nothing more fierce than a mama bear. I will
Mm.
tell you that straight up. But imagine the power of
Mm.
mama bears when Papa Bear is standing right next.
Yes. Yes.
We have failed to stand up and protect innocent children, and there is a full-blown war underway
Mm.
right now across the entire world, but I'm most specifically concerned about here in our country,
Mhm.
the hearts and minds of innocent kids. When I got off air from uh, Newsmax and OAN and Fox and Christian broadcast network, and I was attacked with death threats and
Mm,
hatred and violence and told, you need to understand that there's a difference between a pedophile and a minor attracted person. I went, I'm sorry, what? A minor attract that is a thing. A map,
mhm.
a minor attracted person
Yes.
just means that you're just like super attracted to little kids, but you just
Mm,
haven't acted on it yet. That is like we are saying that that's okay. We are justifying and normalizing that.
mm,
The left's end game here is to normalize pedophilia. There's no other explanation. And so you have to choose a side, men, at this point.
mm,
Either stay on the sidelines and watch as your kids are attacked
mhm,
spiritually, emotionally, physically, or get off of your ass. I'm sorry if I am
mm.
not allowed to say ass on the show, but I'm going to anyway. Get off your ass and
Yes.
get in the fight because if you
Mm,
aren't going to step up and stand by your wife or the mother of your child and fight for your kid, then who is?
mm,
Absolutely nobody is. And there have actually been interviews over the years with murderers and killers and rapists, and many of them have said that they would go after kids who did not have a strong father
mm.
figure or male in their life because
Yes.
they were easy targets. So either sit around and watch the world burn around you or put on the full armor of God and pick up that sword and shield and be ready to protect. That's what
Mm.
I have to say.
Thank you so much, Kyle Reyes.
Thank you.
Beautiful insights on the masculinity crisis.
Thanks for having me.